Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us on the Curbside as we waste a little more time in the garage with Jim Cherry, noted author, illustrator, and columnist for all things automotive, and Tony Barthel, publisher of the Curbside Car Show calendar. Let's head to the garage and see what's going on this week on the Curbside.
Well, welcome to the inaugural Curbside podcast. I'd like to thank you for downloading us and giving us a try, and hopefully you enjoy what you hear. You're always welcome to offer your feedback at curbside.tv, where you can find our car show calendar. You can find articles and all sorts of fun things, and you'll also find my good friend on the other side of the microphone, Mr. Jim Cherry.
Yowdy.
So Jim, why don't you tell the peeps out there a little about yourself?
Little to tell. I'm just really a passionate amateur in terms of car expertise, but I love the history of, and mostly I'm based around styling, design issues, and I'm very big on concept cars. I've written a book on the subject. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. My dad was a car guy. I grew up riding around in Studebaker Hawks and 356 Porsches and stuff. So I got the bug real early. It's been a lifetime thing for me. And so I write for Curbside. We do it every Monday. As you're well aware, we post a new classic car blog under Cherry's Classics. So this is kind of a natural outgrowth for that. Let's see if we can make it fun and interesting for the beleaguered listener out there.
Absolutely. And so my background here, my dad is instrumental in the development of the T3 Turbo. He came over from Germany to do that. We always turbocharged all kinds of stuff and had a lot of fun with those devices. It infused me with oil instead of blood. I really like cars a lot, as would make sense being on a car podcast. The way Curbside got started in 1996, I was asked to put on a car show. I tried to find a good online car show calendar. I couldn't. So I said, well, I'm just going to build one. And I did. And 4 or 5 iterations later, we are where we are today. So welcome to the Curbside Car Show calendar, the Curbside podcast. Thank you for listening. We will be back in just a moment. Are you tired of having to deal with those confusing websites for your car show t-shirts with their hidden fees, secret charges, and crazy gotchas? Well, Car Show-Tees is a company based here in America that employs Americans in a small community, offering jobs and opportunity while also giving you competitive pricing and great service. Plus, we offer a real phone number where you could talk to me in English. We've got shirts, hats, jackets, and just about anything you can wear, and offer both screen printing and embroidery. I appreciate your giving us a chance on your car show apparel, or take us to work. You can visit us on the internet at www.carshow-tees.com, or give me a call, 707-739-6661. That's carshow-tees.com or 707-739-6661. And thank you. We're back, and Jim this week wrote about the year 1959.
That's right, Tony, I sure did. And there's a reason for that. It's my theory that the 1959 car's styling was kind of the apogee, the zenith, the peak, the sine qua non, the absolute top of extreme American automobile styling. The whole jet age, space age, crazy rocket styling that started in the early 50s, kind of, sort of, really reached its peak right around 1959, with, of course, the 1959 Cadillac being the ultimate example of how extreme things got. But even lesser cars like Chevrolets and Fords got pretty wacky. So that's the subject of this week, like 1959. Is it the most extreme period of auto styling ever?
I wouldn't disagree with that. I always wondered as a kid, seeing those 59 caddies rolling around the world, those headlights were right about at eye level if you were on a bicycle, and if anyone ever Three Stooged themselves into those bullet taillights on a 59 Caddy.
Well, I don't know, but I know back then Mad Magazine did a spoof on the 59 Cadillac, and they showed one pulling into a filling station. And back then, as you know, there were attendants that came out to fill your tank. And the attendant is there waiting for the car, and it comes in, and the fin slices him right in the neck and decapitates the guy.
Oh, man.
That's Mad Magazine for you.
Yeah.
We hope that never happened, but those fins were pretty lethal looking. They were the tallest, I think, ever recorded.
Yeah, I wonder what the height of those things is from the ground?
People have tried to measure them. They found it's impossible. There's no tape measure goes that far.
Wow. Well, they are sky high because that was the jet age.
See what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But let's not forget the little seed of change also happened in 1959. Things were about to swivel. As a century plant sounds up a shoot once a year and then explodes in a bloom and sends out its seeds and then shrivels back to normalcy, that's what 59 was to me. It was this great explosion of crazy design. Things were about to get much more sober and much more sedate and less crazy with the styling. The first sign of that in 1959 was the Studebaker Lark, which was the first modern day, later 50s compact car and had huge sales for 1959. It really blew out. It was Studebaker's biggest year in many years, and it was a very big deal, a harbinger of the year to come, 1960, when all the big three brought out their compacts and effectively killed the Studebaker Lark sales right away. It would at least cut them down severely. But so that was it was interesting. Studebaker was ahead of the game. They were like just a year ahead of everybody in the change that was about to come, where we were going to get more sober, more sane compact cars coming out.
And wasn't the Lark actually based on a larger Studebaker?
It was. It was more than based. It was basically that's what it was. It was basically the center body and frames, the front center section of the Studebakers they'd been making since 1953, and they had just shortened the ends of it to make it a compact, spiffed it up a little here and there, and you basically had kind of what the Pacer was in a way. It was a wider, small car, a bigger interior of a small car, but lengthwise it was in the compact dimensions.
The Pacer. I love the Pacer, and one of these days there will be one in my garage, only because the stranger the better in my world.
Well, unfortunately, we have 2 Pacer fans on this podcast, so we hope people will continue to listen anyway.
The official car of the Curbside Car Show calendar, the American Motors Pacer.
That's the best way to lose listeners I could think of.
And if they stick around, they're the most wonderful people there are.
All 7 of them.
Absolutely. You think it's that high a number?
I'm an optimist. Forgive me. But anyway, so if you just looking across the field, I'm sure, Tony, you're aware of the reason that GM's 1958 models were a one-year phenomena when they had been planned to use those bodies for 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware of what happened and changed
absolutely.
That. Should I mention that to our faithful listeners as well?
Why not? Absolutely.
Because I think there are people that are not aware that in the summer of 1956, one of the General Motors designers happened to get a peek through the fence somewhere on the Chrysler grounds of the upcoming 1957 Chrysler lines. And at that point, Harley Earl was off on a European vacation. So this stylist rushed back to the studios and told the other designers, hey, we got a real problem. If we're going to do these doughy, kind of fat-looking Earl barges for 2 more years, we're going to look really bad in light of the longer, lower, leaner, lighter-looking space coupes that Virgil Exner's putting out for this coming year, 57. We got to get our act together. So they went to the executives of GM and said, we are going to lose so much business if we don't throw these 58s out and start over for 59, because we've got to be up to speed with Virgil Exner. The executives agreed with them when they saw what they were talking about. They agreed to go along with that program, even though it was hugely expensive to throw away all those dies after only 1 year. You know, that's just only General Motors could have afforded to do that.
Yes.
Unbelievably expensive. But anyway, they did it. They started to work on the 59s. Then Harley Earl came back from his vacation to face this mutiny, which was mind-blowing to him because he had ruled with an iron fist. He was the man. Nobody ever dared suggest any mutinies to him. And so he went in his office and pouted for 3 days and didn't talk to anybody. Then he came out and he led the charge, and he got behind this new program, and he led them to victory, and they did all those crazy cool 1959 General Motors cars. And so all credit to him for, being adaptable and going with the program. It's really a little known bit of history.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you think about the power that Harley Earl yielded at General Motors.
Absolutely.
There's nobody like that nowadays, where it's truly he had the final say on design, and so much at General Motors.
Well,
was the first real celebrity designer.
It's interesting you say that, because not only does nobody have that power anymore, no styling department has that power. Back then, I actually met once a guy who managed a General Motors plant building 1959 Chevrolets. And I said, what was that like? And he said, back then the stylists were gods. They set the overall package of what the car was going to be, and everybody had to make that work. The engineers had to develop the mechanical parts to work with that style. Builders, the people that ran or figured out the actual production lines, they had to work with whatever that was. It was all from the ivory tower of the designers on down. And he said building the 1959 Chevrolet was a nightmare. That extreme curve of the fin, that curve underneath the fin going back down onto the body, really dished in part. That was like impossible. That was the absolute limits of what you could do with the die stamping in steel.
GM's production capability was so far ahead in terms of that kind of thing in those days as well. So those, I'm sure a lot of the other designers looked at that and just pulled their hair out. Looked like me.
Well, yeah, if GM could barely do it, it was state of the art for sure.
Absolutely.
And he said it was just a nightmare for those guys to build those 59 Chevrolets. It was really difficult work, and I think there was a lot more handwork done on them than anybody would admit. But that's the point. The designers ruled. It was all about the looks of the cars, which is amazing today because that's like the last thing they think of now.
Well, again, there's so much more regulation as well in terms of aerodynamics and fuel economy and crash safety and on and on and on.
Pedestrian safety even. Pedestrian safety. Even when now cars are designed so when you hit somebody with the front of your car, they fall in the proper manner as invoke less injuries on themselves.
Yeah,
that puts a lot of restrictions on the designers.
Yeah, we can thank that design for your being here right now.
Well, thank you for mentioning that, Tony. But let's not go into it.
All right.
So it was this big crazy explosion of design for design's sake, longer, lower, leaner cars. And if you look at the 59 GM products and then look at the 57 Virgil Exner products, basically the format is there with Exner, and even the roof lines, the basic roofs of the two-door hardtop coupes of like a 57 Plymouth is basically the same as a 59 Chevy. It's the same top. A little more wraparound to the windshield, I guess, but the top is pretty much the same deal. So there was a huge influence, but GM took it to the bank. They did a good job. They sold cars.
And that was coming out of a recession. 58 there was a bad year economically for the U.S.
It was, and it was, of course, that's when they launched the ill-fated Edsel.
Indeed.
Poor thing, and it didn't have a chance.
No. Well, that category, the kind of premium mid-range price, really took a dive in 58, and that's right where that brand was pointed, and it choked for so many reasons.
It had a lot of problems. I'm sure we'll do an Edsel show in Toto someday for the 59s. Interestingly enough, I've read different figures, but more commonly I have read that Ford actually outsold Chevrolet for 59. And also interesting is the fact that Ford's styling was a bit more conventional than Chrysler products or GM's during that era. If you remember the 1959 Ford, it was fairly boxy looking car. But halfway through the year, Ford took the famed Thunderbird C-pillar, that formal roofline of the last pillar, and put that on the Galaxy 500. And for the first time you got that formal, classy, elegant, luxe styling on a popular price car. No one had done that yet, put that Thunderbird roofline on a cheap car. And that thing exploded. People freaked for that Galaxy with the Thunderbird roofline. And so much so, if you look at the cars from then on, starting into the early 60s, basically every car line adopted that roofline in some form or another.
Yeah, the rooflines became far more formal because you look at even a 59 Cadillac, it's a very, by today's standard, informal roofline.
It's sporty and it's bubblicious. It's like a bubble top.
Yeah, 59 bubble top Chevy.
Yeah, exactly, same thing. But that Ford brought that out for 59, and that gave them a huge boost and kind of put them over the top sales-wise, even though their styling basically was fairly conservative. You had Edsel, you had the Mercury. They were all kind of carryovers. And the Lincoln for 59, again, was a carryover from 58. As extreme as the Cadillac in its own weird way, but didn't have quite the fins.
They were pretty boxy.
They were boxy, but they were boats. They were huge cars. They were the biggest unibody cars that any humans have ever built, were the 58, 9, and 60 Lincolns.
Yeah, they were gigantic.
Yeah, no one had done a unibody that big, and I guess there was some issues here and there. But anyway, so that's 1959. I don't know if you had any other interesting aspects you wanted to mention.
Not really, but I would also love to have a 59 New Yorker station wagon if they were giving those away down the road.
Oh, don't get me started. I love the late 50s station wagons that were hardtops. In other words, the side pillars rolled down with the windows.
Yeah, I love very few pillarless hardtop station wagons ever built, and that is one of my favorites.
It's interesting that you're right. Very few were built, but almost every manufacturer offered them. It's just, I think they maybe were too expensive.
Probably.
But you could get them in just about any car if you were looking for one. Just to finish the 59 topic, I did want to mention that it was really the last blast for the famed Harley Earl, as he retired in 1958 after 30 years as head of GM Styling.
One heck of a run for
it really, well, it'll never be duplicated. Nobody, that was the biggest manufacturer in the world, with the guy running it who had absolute power over what the cars were going to look like, making the most cars in the world. I mean, it's never going to be that again. No one's ever going to equal that. He worked those guys to death. He would have them working on all the GM several car and truck lines at the same time. The same designers were styling that incredible series of concept cars for his Motorama shows that he did during that period. There's stories about these guys sleeping under their desks. He would have food delivered in so they wouldn't leave. They were almost slave labor. They were working so hard to do the volume and quality of design that he was demanding. That was the end of it, 1958, and he was replaced by William Mitchell, but came in with a fresh breath of air and led us into the clean Euro look of the 1960s cars.
Yeah, a big change.
Big change, and yet I think he chose well. I think Mitchell was the perfect antidote to the excesses of the 50s, the big fins and all the chrome and whatever. He was into cleaner, slicker, more artful design. Basically, I've heard the difference described as Harley Earl liked to just design the car and then gob it up with a lot of jewelry and special effects. He was into all that. Whereas William Mitchell's orientation was more to make the car itself, sans any decorative elements or chrome or whatever. The body itself would be a piece of clean sculpture, and that would be the design. And then maybe you add a little jewelry here and there, but basically he was into the clean sculptured look of the body and not so much the add-ons and special effects.
Yeah, and by the mid-60s, you see some extreme examples of how beautiful that design philosophy was.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Even as early as 1960, look at the 1960 Cadillac versus the 59.
Yeah, big difference.
Big difference. You have a real, to me, I prefer it. It's not as crazy as the 59, but it's just so clean and slick. It's just a gorgeous car.
Oh, I like the odd and extreme, and so I have in my past owned a 59 Cadillac.
Oh, you did?
Yes, but for a very short period of time. It was the early 80s, and I was taunted and teased unmercifully by my friends who told me that no woman would ever be seen in public with me if I had that car. So
you needed to change your friends instead of your car.
I know.
The wrong friends there, buddy.
If I had that 59 Caddy now, I would be a happier lad.
The girls would be lining up to destroy your marriage.
Indeed.
Yes, they see that 59, they come a-running, pal.
Oh, yeah. It was a red convertible, too.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, it was beautiful. It was.
Man.
Yeah, I know. Well, and here's the funny thing. You look at the value of those cars. Today, I bought that car for $1,500 and sold it for $1,800. And I was very happy with that $300 profit.
When was that?
80 had to be 82 or 83, somewhere thereabouts.
Yeah, that's before they way before they actually took off.
Yeah, at one point, all of a sudden, we woke up and went, wow, those cars are incredible. We need to, just like the VW thing and so many other cars where all of a sudden they get popular and suddenly the values skyrocket.
Yeah, it's very faddish business, collector cars.
Yeah. Yeah.
One extreme example that I saw was in the late 80s. I was at Barrett-Jackson. This is way back in the day when they did it at a AAA baseball stadium. It was so small. They had someone had a Tucker there that was completely original, perfect. Even the tires were the tires that were put on that car in 1948. And it was in good maintained shape. You know, paint was dull and You could tell it was an old car, but everything was there and everything was as perfect as it could be for that old a car. And it sold for $75,000. Now, those cars are in between 1 to 2 million now.
Oh, yeah.
And original ones are almost impossible. I don't know if there are any. They're all restored now.
On that same topic, I bought and sold a lot of cars in the 80s as a way of basically making money for myself. And in those days, if a Chrysler product came up for sale and you looked at it from the standpoint of making money, you wouldn't. I remember buying one and just sitting on it forever until I could finally sell it and saying I'll never buy a Chrysler again. And now you could get $800,000-900,000 for a Roadrunner if you can find one.
Oh, you're talking about muscle cars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you talk Chrysler, my favorite, of course, is the 300s. That's where I go. That's my idea of I guess it's not really technically a muscle car, but I love the 300s from 55 to like 62.
Well, even sticking on the same, on our topic of the day, the 59s, nobody wanted those Virgil Exner cars in that time, the early 80s. Now, of course, they're worth their weight in gold, but I would love to get one of those now, again, with a push-button transmission and all of that.
And don't forget the toilet seat on the rear deck. You got to have that.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a Plymouth.
Well, it was also the Imperial had that.
Oh, that's
different
true.
Cars had that. I think some of the 300s offered those. He spread them around. Even the Valiant had a toilet seat the first year.
Yeah, that first year Valiant was a wacky looking car.
It's wacky. I love its weirdness, though.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan. I was at the Chrysler Museum a few years ago. Sadly, it's been closed now. But they had Valiant there, a 1960 original first year, perfectly minted up, restored Valiant. It was so gorgeous. So cool to see one that was brand new.
Slant 6.
Exactly.
We're going to take a brief break. We'll be back in just a moment, and we're going to talk about a cool car destination.
Finally getting that yard work done?
No, I've tied all these balloons to a lawn chair, and I'm going to float around and tell everybody to put their car show and vintage trailer shows on the Curbside Car Show calendar.
You don't have to go anywhere. They can do it right from any smartphone or computer. Besides, are you trying to win a Darwin Award?
Up, and whoa. No, I dropped the BB gun.
I'll go get the rifle. Hope I don't miss.
Hey, the neighbors are skinny dipping.
My husband is insane. But Curbside.tv is a great place to get the word out about your car shows and vintage trailer events and read great stories about vintage cars.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Hope you enjoyed that break. And with this segment, we're talking about a cool car destination. And this is one of my personal favorites. It's the Automobile Driving Museum in beautiful seaside El Segundo. The Automobile Driving Museum, if you don't know, is a museum of a lot of Packards and other very interesting cars. It started out as the collection of a guy named Stanley Zimmerman, and it expanded beyond that. They have Eleanor Roosevelt's Plymouth, and they have Stalin's Packard, and a bunch of other really drool-worthy machines. But one of the things that really sets that museum apart is as they say, we're the museum that takes you for a ride. And going on a Sunday, they pick 2 or 3 cars out of their collection, and they actually will take you for rides around several of the large city blocks near the museum. So you could go, I've been in Packards, and there was a 28, was a Studebaker, I think. A lot of different cars. I've even driven in their 1960 Chevrolet Corvair with a 2-speed power glide transmission, and lots of different vehicles. And you go out there and off you go around the block and see what those old cars are like. So definitely a different place, definitely worth seeing if you're in the LA area, and one of my favorite museums. Some museums are very standoffish. This one is very almost not tactile, because you don't want to go up and touch the cars, but you're not at such an arm's length that the cars are not approachable. And they have really great docents, and they even have a snack room and gift shop, of course. They have a collection of cars that are in sort of a mock auto showroom from the 1930s, including they have Howard Hughes' girlfriend's Packard. So a lot of history-worthy cars, a lot of interesting cars of all eras. They have one of those Studebakers wagons with the sliding roof that GMC copied later on. And
the Wagonaire.
Yeah, absolutely. You could stand up a refrigerator. I saw it in the advert.
Yeah, but when you say GM copied that, when did GM copy that?
The GMC, they had an SUV. And
fairly recent.
Yeah, GMC made an SUV with that same roof line, and
I wonder if the GMC leaked as good as the.
I know that was a common complaint of that Wagoneer.
I say it's worth living with a few leaks if you can put a refrigerator in the back of your car.
Yeah, because who doesn't want to haul a refrigerator around standing up vertically in your station wagon?
It's something I've lived for and never had to do.
Well, it's a pretty cool thing to do. Oh, that's our first pun of the podcast.
Yuck, yuck.
By the way, for those of you listening at home, this is your fair warning. I absolutely love puns as much as I love Pacers and Corvairs. So
I will try to control them. I hate puns. I absolutely hate puns. Two things I hate in this world are SUVs and puns. Those are Tony's two favorite things in the world.
I wouldn't say SUVs are my favorite, but
don't lie to me, Tony. Come on.
I like them. It's just puns are way up there.
You fall asleep dreaming of SUVs. He's got a tattoo of a Nissan Armada on his arm.
Yeah, but you didn't see the tattoo of the Suburban, because I don't show that in public.
I don't want to know about that
one. Wow, this has gone almost completely off the rails, and yet we're not talking trains. Not sure how that happened.
There goes him punning again.
Yeah, and it only goes downhill from here.
Tony, we need to wrap this up and let these poor people go back to their lives.
Absolutely. Well, we will do just that. I want to thank you all for enduring this all the way to the end here, assuming that you have. Either that or you just left the podcast running. On behalf of myself and Jim Cherry, it's a real pleasure. Thank you very much for your time. I want to direct you over to the Curbside Car Show calendar where you can read all about 1959 vehicles, courtesy of Jim. We also have a bunch of car shows there, and we hope to appear in your podcatcher again next week. So on behalf of Jim and myself, thank you very much.
Well, it may sound like two miscreants in the basement of their mom's garage. It actually takes a village to put this on. And we've got those village people. Staff chef is Sal Manella. Our legal department is headed by Sue Yu. Dental care by Gingivitis. Thank you for joining us this week. And now go get something productive done. That honey-do list isn't getting any shorter.